All right, thank you for staying with the Monday Report Town Hall session. We're talking about the teenage pregnancy crisis. More than 2,000 of them between the age of 10 to 14 were impregnated from January to about October. There's not commensurate prosecutions. So why is this happening, and whose business is it to end teenage pregnancy? Let's see what you're saying here. Online, at Trevor Mbija at Citizen TV Kenya, use the hashtag Monday Report. Peter Simiyu says it is because no grown-up men are involved. It's a pure teen girls and boys pregnancy. Highly doubt that. All right. Carrington Mwendwa says we must take urgent steps to make sure children and young people receive the information and support they need to protect themselves from unintended pregnancies and HIV infections. And Mzigo L makes it simple. He says charity begins at home, period. All right. South B, you say, I think parents do not have open communication with their children about some issues until when some children fear their parents, even in asking them some questions and not having time to mentor and monitor their movements. Okay. Mama Kwame says to think that these are minors and some may have been impregnated by adults is saddening. We need a multi-sectoral approach. Okay. Harry says, I think parents and teachers should try to explain in depth the issue of sex, try to create an environment where they can educate teenagers on sex education. Let us have open communication with our children. Let's see, Emily Wamutwiri says, good evening. I feel that teen pregnancy results from poverty, where many girls give their bodies for money. Also, we shy away from speaking about premarital sex to our children. A conservative society, we are losing a generation. Sex education is important. Manyala Collins says there is a big crisis in parenting, as most parents being single are unable to offer a noble cause of life skills and discipline required for the positive growth of their children, hence leaving all responsibility to the teachers. Meso says blame on the administration for increased teenage pregnancy is unfair. All societal agencies have roles to play, starting with the media, churches, and family units. Sex education is important, but not enough. There should be regulation on certain content on the internet as well. Let me see if I can squeeze in one more here. Alvin Mwangi says, in most cases, no parent or guardian wants to think that their children is probably engaging in sexual activities of any kind. Parents and guardians should stop burying their heads in the sand and provide comprehensive, non-judgmental sexuality education. Marsha, I'll start with you, but before we do that, let me bring in some of the views that is coming through from our people on what should be done to sort this out.
I feel from my side that the teenage pregnancies can be stopped, but there is need for parents to take active roles in guiding their children, because if they are not guided, then the world out there will make use of them. And so parents must be able to take that active role, because actually some of the parents are in cultures that are not supposed to talk about these sex issues and when they're in those particular age. So again, those are the things that are affecting this particular. So church, the school, the community should be able to take active role in guiding them, in participating in these particular events that help them to talk and speak so that they can be helped to avoid these pregnancies. Thank you.
Area pregnancy is so rampant not only at Nairobi County. Juvenile situation has reached to a point where those involved are not prosecuted because corruption by the involvers remains keyword term. Does it mean our courts are not aware of what is going on in these cases? Why churches append such cases yet they know early pregnancy is prohibited? What about the parents of those teenagers? Do they follow their cases? Thank you very much.
All right, Masha, so what do we do from here? And you started by asking a fundamental question. Whose business is it to end teenage pregnancy? But what do we do from here to ensure this doesn't continue?
Thank you, Trevor. I think the most important thing is that we are all in agreement that it is everyone's business, and especially the stakeholders engaged in these discussions around the fact that we have the power to end teenage pregnancy. We are talking about everyone from religious leaders, from the parents, from the leadership in the government, but most importantly also the girls themselves and the boys that we are speaking about. I want to say that we just discussed earlier on what can end teenage pregnancy. Is it the law alone? Is it education alone? or is it something else we need to do differently? And my view is that we have to combine all these things. Trevor, if I look at the data today of the numbers who have actually come out, sexual-based violence survivors who have come to the facilities to take post-exposure prophylaxis, right now we have around 9,951, and the year is not ended. So we are still talking about very high sexual violence cases going on in this country. And when you go deeper and dig this data, you're going to find children again. So there's something there we can do with the law, where we provide the supportive environment to ensure that, that the rapist does not go free, the defiler does not go free, but they are prosecuted to the end. And that is everyone's business. When we hear there's a kangaroo court in a village, Nyumba Kumi business come in here, that we cannot go and just pick that case and decide to resolve it, because that rapist, that defiler will be doing that in the near future again to another child. Then secondly, we've spoken about boldness in terms of where do we shift the education towards. And I think for me, this is a conversation we all have to have. We all feel that indeed there's something you can do in the education part. But when we start implementing the same, we then shy away from doing the comprehensive education that is required, and it is also age appropriate. Then thirdly, it's about not keeping figures like this with ourselves. You know, Trevor, when you look at a figure that you've had from 2020 January to 2021 September, you've had around 544,285 teen mothers. Basically what we are saying there are no more girls. We are just saying that our girls are becoming mothers. And we cannot all keep quiet and wait for these numbers to build up. And that's why we must see the sense of urgency to say that we all come together as government, as stakeholders, and begin to see this as a big problem as the society we have to deal with. I also want to tell you, Trevor, like in addition to that, if you go look at HIV data again, this year alone, that is last year, 2020, you begin to see figures of around 5,000 infections. But then what is worrying is also the numbers that we lose for the ages between 15 to 19 to AIDS-related deaths. Again, you start seeing figures of 2,000. So I think for me, the most important thing we must do as a society is to acknowledge we have a problem, which we have done, but then to acknowledge that this problem cannot be sorted by us getting angry at one another. It has to be sorted out by us coming together, sectors together, and people with voices to say that this has to come to an end. And for me, it is that it is everyone's business. And everyone's business means that somebody must be accountable for the fact that we have teenage pregnancy continuing in a country like Kenya, where we would be far off and see this as a development issue. When you look at Trevor, the fact that somebody did mention that when we get teenage mothers, we send them out of school. We all know that, that education is one of the key pillars that can make us move forward, especially in terms of economic growth. So we also again need to look at these teen mothers.
Yeah.
What are we doing for them? Because if we don't do anything, the cycle will repeat itself.
Yeah.
And that's for me where I differ with the, one of the earlier speakers who was saying that we chase them out of school. We must take the teen mothers back to school. We must give them a second chance, but most importantly, we must look for a solution for them not to, again, get to become teen mothers and have their children grow up to become teen mothers because of the situation they're in. Allow me again to just mention one more thing, Trevor.
Yes.
When we speak about poverty, for example, we forget there are girls with agency. Agency meaning that there's no poverty involved. Is the fact that you have bought your child a mobile phone and you never supply the airtime. So the child just realizes that she has an agency. So we also need to look at those children who have agency and they have the money, for example, but they are looking for something more. How do we educate them differently? Because there's no one solution for all the children. You'll find different children have different reasons why they would then become vulnerable to have sex, especially with older persons, and then begin to see what can then we do with these older persons who, even if they're doing transactional sex with a child, it's a criminal offense. We cannot have any discussion about a transaction sex with a child. That's defilement.
Yeah.
Over to you, Trevor.
But one other question. From the report that you gave and the numbers, what is the main cause of teenage pregnancy?
So Trevor, we are still trying to do a number of surveys, and the NCPD is planning to do another study just to look at what are the major causes of teenage pregnancy. But when you look at some of the smaller studies that have been done and our previous demographic health survey data that was there, gender-based violence and sexual violence is one of the key drivers. That one we cannot really run away from. Of course, we have scenarios where we are saying it is vulnerability. Sometimes the vulnerability as far as food is concerned, because you know where families lack food, it's a necessity, and a lot of things can happen with that kind of vulnerability. We see, of course, geographical location where the children are and what's going on within that community. That is also cultural. Trevor, when I went to Homa Bay, I met a number of girls, and they were telling me that, some of them were telling me that when they see some of their younger girls who get pregnant, they see that they have, when they come back, they are round and they look nice, and they thought that, that the ones who are getting pregnant look better than them. So we have different reasons, and I think it's important for us to conduct further studies so that you can be able to come and tell you that these are the reasons why these children are getting pregnant.
All right.
But so far now, what we want to focus on is the violence and the sexual violence and defilement that we know for sure is driving the teenage pregnancies.
All right. Maureen, how do we stop this crisis?
That's quite a huge question, but the lessons we have learned where I work at Lean On Me Foundation, we support adolescent girls, adolescent mothers living with HIV to access service. What I have learned is that it's really difficult to live with HIV even for adults, much more for adolescents. And then if it's compounded with pregnancy, it becomes very, very complicated, because here they have to take care of their health and their unborn baby they're carrying, who will also be another human being they have to take care of, when they themselves are still vulnerable and depend on others for livelihood. So I think what we are looking at is, when we are talking about all these pregnancies, I think these are symptoms of underlying societal problems that we really need to look out to. We need to address the root causes and not necessarily the symptoms. And I would look at it in three ways. The first one, like I said before, we need to look at it in terms of behavior change. We also need to look at the structural aspect of it and the biomedical.
Yeah.
So in terms of behavior change, I would say that, like I say, we have said in this call that we are not giving enough information to these young people.
Okay.
We are not giving accurate information. We are also not dealing with vulnerability. When Lucy said, and we have also had it at Lean On Me, that someone had sex because they needed sanitary towels, or they needed a plate of food, a plate of chips, or they just needed to feel cool. These are things that we need to see. How do we, again, address the inequality that the society has put a few people, where sanitary towel becomes an issue that needs to be addressed in a very uncomfortable way. Then we talk about structural ways of addressing this. We have laws and policies that protect these young people. Are we implementing them enough? You find that a child has been raped, and the rapist gives a cow to the family, and this story is not supposed to be talked about.
Yeah.
If it happens within the family, we decide we need to protect the perpetrator in the family more than the victim, and therefore we shun it down and ask the victim to be quiet about it. So I think we need to reinforce those, again, the structural barriers, such as our laws, our harmful gender norms, the practices we have in our society, and call a spade and punish wrong deeds.
Okay.
And then we have biomedical services. We have victims of sexual violence not getting the services they need, like like HIV prevention, and
Yeah.
pregnancy prevention services. These need to happen. They need to be available. The information needs to reach everyone. And here we need media. We need the other influential places like the churches, the mosques, to talk about some of these available services so that people can access. And we also need to support those that may not have been raped, but they need to these services to prevent HIV and pregnancy. So I think we have a starting point, and we really need to focus on the short, medium, and long-term plans to provide. Thank you.
All right. Otoa, what do we do?
Thank you. And quickly, before my internet starts once again, I really don't want to be taken by my colleagues on the panel to for them to insinuate that I was actually proposing that any girl who gets pregnant should be chased out of school. That is not what I said. And if that is what they thought of my stand, then I have to make that correction. What I was saying is that we in the school environment must also come out deliberately to have tougher measures, either written in form of school rules and regulations that can actually curb that. And I'm happy about them when they talk about structural measures. But quickly, two things, Trevor. One is that we must not normalize some of the behavioral things that is in our society. I will tell you that, Trevor, without a fear or any favor, that we have normalized this thing called mpango wa kando from all the age groups. So when our children are growing up and the mother, the auntie, the big sister has mpango wa kando and all that, our generation is actually lacking role models. And what they're doing is just a replica of what the larger society is doing. And then there is the issue of single parentage, Trevor. Single parentage, and in as much as I sympathize with Lucy and reckon her past, you realize that when you go to a place like Dandora, most families are actually separated, they are single parentage, but they are living in those very congested single rooms and all that. So the child has no privacy. The child is growing up in very deplorable life situation. And therefore, this child will actually just do things because they say it's a tabula rasa kind of in psychology. But if we all came together, in language and literature, we say that it takes a whole village to educate, to bring up a child. Trevor, growing up, when people used to pass and they could see a young man and a young boy ostensibly coming from school, but they're fondling on the roadside, those two young people will receive whips of the cane and they are escorted to their parents. It is not there. Right now, you touch somebody's child and you are the one that is going to be in for a rude shock. Can we as a society go back to the basics and say that all of us have a responsibility to make sure, otherwise these numbers, and it's really sad, Trevor, let me just tell you, give you a scenario. Wake up one day after the party of a weekend in Nairobi and collect the sachet that holds this Postina 2. It's, I think, a contraceptive kind of that stops pregnancy. The youth are concerned about stopping pregnancy, but they are not concerned about HIV and other infections that come with it. And you have heard Lucy very well. You have heard the research very well that where teenage pregnancies are happening, it is also almost going in concurrence with the number of HIV infections. So we are talking of a teenage HIV infection rate that is very high. As National AIDS Control Council, Madam Marsha, sitting on this discussion table, you must take this as a very worrying trend. I say, as a teacher, Otosifuna, you rather carry a child and deliver, because that can be mitigated over time. But you see, when the second wrath comes in for the, and you can see that is like double tragedy for the sake of my sister Lucy. You are getting pregnant, but at the same time, you are getting HIV/AIDS. To me, it is very sad. So as a society, Trevor, let us come together. Let us support each other as a family. As a teacher, I wanted to say this before the internet went off. I have no problem holding a condom and running out a practical experiment before the girls and how they would rather use it, Trevor. Let me be very controversial on this show. They will tell them, push comes to the shop, you rather use that contraceptive than talk about because it is very sad.
Okay.
Baba zao na mama zao waliwalea. Right now they are taking care of their there is virtually no home that you go in now, Trevor. Ukose kwamba kuna mkua na.
Okay. Watoa Sifuna, again, technical challenges. I guess your internet has had you. Lucy, what should we do from here?
I am happy, Mwalimu Sifuna, we are closing the show on the same page.
Yeah.
And I agree with what my other panelists have said. Like I've said throughout, I think I've given a challenge and have given a solution all throughout this conversation. But we need to take responsibility. The push has come to shove, Mwalimu Sifuna. Start the condom demonstration. Demonstration.
Yeah.
Start it. This is the time. Let us get this information to these youngings when we still have time. Okay. Those numbers are not numbers. That is a girl, 1,530 in Homa Bay. Yeah. Those are 1,530 girls living, breathing, and their parents have to take that burden. And their families have to take that burden. When we look at it like that it's not a number, it's many Lucies, 1,530 Lucies as teenagers who have to deal with the consequences that have gotten to them where they are. It's very important for us to think clearly and to come together, like everyone has said on this show, on this panel, come together and look at, we know the solutions. So far we know. We are starting the conversation, yes, but we know what we need to do. Let us do it. Okay. If you're seeing a community organization like what we are doing in Dandora, support it. Come ask, what can you do? You bringing 2 packets of pads goes a long way, because this is how we attract the girls, and this is how we have conversation that ensure they're not putting themselves in risky behaviors. We think these children know, but they don't know. They know up to a point. There's still so much they need to learn. In schools, we are privileged in our community to have schools open up for us, especially community high schools. All the teachers back at home, if you're watching, thank you so much for opening up schools, because this is the other opportunity. They have agreed for us to be there and we can have this conversation. Do you know, when I got pregnant, I wanted to be a nun. I was actually in Catholic. I was going to become a nun. How funny is that? I was not a bad girl. These girls are not bad, so that they are going for this. These things happen to them, and it's because in this church, or these conversations happening, and I particularly have a problem with the church, because you play a very big role. I would think it's the same role they play as media. Yeah. The way you bring us together here to speak and to start these conversations, the same way the church, mothers and fathers are there and they give them priority and they give them so much privilege. If a pastor says something, Pastor amesema, and we have to take that privilege. All the privileges that we have where we are, there's something you can do. Don't just be a keyboard warrior. There are things you can do. Support organizations that are working, groups that are working in the community. Start one if it's not existing. We can help you, reach out to us. We can help you think through what you need to do, especially the men. Trevor, how many boys are you mentoring?
Good question. Lucy Wanjiku Majan, thank you so much for speaking to us. Maureen Murenga, HIV activist from Kisumu, Notoa Sifuna, teacher, and Ruth Laibon Masha as well, CEO, National AIDS Control Council. Masha, before I let you go, by the way, there was a suggestion by a teacher who talked about actual demonstrations. Would you recommend that kind of bare knuckle, straight up front conversations?
Trevor, I think where we are now, we need to think about all solutions. And the bolder we get, the more we are going to deal with this matter. Trevor, let me say there's nothing normal seeing a 10-year-old in maternity. So we are actually having an abnormal situation, and therefore we have to get solutions that can change this trajectory and give us, normalize the situation, because what we are seeing, it is abnormal. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much for making timely. Susie Lindsay here on Twitter says, hey, Trevor, we are receiving uncontrolled students from absentee parents who have failed in their responsibilities. They defend their indisciplined kids even when they are on the wrong. Soon, we will have children burning their own parents' homes. Samaki Mkunje, and leaves it at that point. Uma Ogutu says, Mr. Mbija, kindly tell Bwana Otoa Sifuna that you cannot manage today's children using yesterday's methods and expect a better tomorrow. You should stop living in utopia and climb down from the glass house. Mikala says, I like today's conversation. Teenage pregnancy has been a problem for years on end. Most of us bury our heads in the sand, preaching abstinence to teenagers already having sex instead of proper sex education and information about contraceptives and STIs. And James Apamo here says, access to too much information in the internet has caught all of us off guard. We need to re-strategize. And finally here, Iniesta says, parents should just call a spade on matters of sex education. It will save the girl child. And Honorable Victor Ijaika says, the missing conversation with teenage pregnancy and many other challenges that young people are going through is the lack of communication channels between parents and children. It's worsened by families' conflicts, and deliberate efforts towards supporting family units has to be overcome. All right? That's where we leave it for now. We've really run out of time here. My name is Trevor Mbija. It's always a pleasure being with you here. And of course, we'll keep having these conversations until something happens. We have to do our part as a society to protect our children. Those are not just numbers. These are our children. We have to do something. Good night for now. My name is Trevor Mbija. God bless.